This is the sound. One of the best places to be, right here, where the mountain meets the moon. John O'Keefe, here, present, and accounted for. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is great to see you. Thank you so much for being here in a different mood 20 than 24 hours ago, but not completely healed from the difficulties. So let's talk a little bit about this. So I did not wake up yesterday morning knowing that life would change, the history would change. I would not wake up, did not expect this morning that everything, well, and it doesn't, not everything is ironed out. But yesterday, there was violence in our country's capital. And I think that it's very, very important, as my BOCO crew of awesome spoke for a very long time today in a very responsible and very respectful way about the difference between the political party and a group who separates themselves but still calls that they are underneath that party. I have lots and lots of friends who are of what's called the Republican Party. Hello, Edie's my. I'm not reading. Come on, you were on vacation. I have a lot of friends who are participating in their government and call themselves, the party of the Republican Party. I also have a lot of friends who call themselves a part of the Democratic Party. But yesterday changed a lot of things. And our team in our class spoke very, very diligently and responsibly about the importance of recognizing the differences, that there are very good people on both sides of the political parties here in the United States of America. Now, there are liberals and there are independents and things like that. But the reality is that in a lot of ways, we look here in the United States at the government of Democrats and Republicans. Now, I want to touch base on this because yesterday rocked my world. And fortunately, I had a safe place to go. I want everybody in our crew to recognize that there are 4 expectations in this space, which is 1, this is a safe place. That means that you have every right to be here, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe. But it is a safe place. It means that you have a foundation of safety. And yesterday, I felt unsafe. And that was hard for me because I trust and believe deeply in the United States of America. And so that part was a really big piece. This is a safe place. 2, manage yourself. Now, I work with 10 and 11-year-olds. And the reality is that we practice on a daily basis the idea that we understand our bodies, we understand the way that we think, we understand how we work. Managing yourself means that you recognize what you're doing and whether it's good or bad, whether it's the right choice or the wrong choice, whether it's responsible or irresponsible. And it's very, very important that you recognize that you are responsible for yourself. Manage yourself, meaning keep people safe and manage each other. 3, treat people with dignity and respect. Now, I think about our main character, Minli. Does she treat people with dignity and respect? All the time. She makes them feel safe and she knows how to carry herself. And so I kind of follow in this line of, I am really liking our main character, Minli. Yesterday, I don't feel, now you might have differences and I would love to have conversation, but the plain and simple is I believe that there were people who did not treat people with dignity and respect. That's a really important one. Now, the final one is respect the learning space of others. That means your actions have the effect or potential to affect somebody else's learning space or living space or country. And these things are the 4 tenets of our space together here. Now, we are not a political group. And we are not here to have deep conversation in regards to that, but I do ask for you to keep an open mind, to listen to fact, to ensure that you are paying very close attention to what truly is happening, and look at multiple resources in order to understand that. Please make sure that you are looking at sources that are fair and objective. Look at what the person says, look at what the people do, look at how the people respond to the ways in which they are going about their actions in life. I have my very good friend, Teresa. You are here. Thank you so much for being present. I'm so honored that you love coming and joining us, especially from Colorado. Welcome back. By the way, I saw that you had a wonderful adventure. I promise not to slow down. It's going to be your responsibility to make sure that you keep up with us. We are going to be moving, and I will tell you, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon is a brilliant book, and you do not want to miss a single second. We are halfway through chapter 24. And so I want to let you know that we have come to a point, bizarrely so. I'm trying to recall yesterday because there was a lot going on up in my brain. You know how sometimes you get distracted. You got to bring yourself back. Sometimes you might have to reread what you read yesterday. I'm not going to do that for you right now. But the plain and simple is I'm going to tell you that yesterday was a crazily weird day. I mean, we got Minli meeting with the king, who talks about a secret part of the story, about this secret piece of paper that was ripped out of the Book of Fortune that happens every time you look at it to give you an answer, whether you like it or not. It doesn't always give, and plain and simple, life lesson right here, ladies and gentlemen. Life does not always hand you what you want, but it often hands you what you need. Right? So the reality is that you get into this place where she is in this point that I need this borrowed line. And she sees that the borrowed line is this ripped out piece of paper that was kept by king after king after king, right? It was the great-great-grandfather of the king now. So it would be king after king after king after king. And he happens to pull it out of this thing, and he's sitting there with it. And what does it tell him? What you cling to, you will lose. What a great lesson yesterday. What you cling to, will you lose. My very good friend Mag sent me a text yesterday after this. I love how this works because she's connecting it to other parts of her life. Now, we're hearing it from Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, but she tells me that quote actually comes from a religious leader, spiritual leader by the name of Buddha. I don't know if you know about Buddha, but I will tell you that you should probably do a little exploration, just like you should probably find out about Muhammad. You should probably find out a little bit about this guy, Jesus. You should probably be exploring the Judaic religion just to kind of see how all of these messages seem to kind of fall into the same idea. And it seems that Buddha's line, what you cling to, you will lose, is actually what was found on the borrowed line. So it's almost like the Book of Fortune or the piece of magic moonlight paper actually has that message. Crazy. So thank you, Mag, for sharing that you understand that to come from somebody or somewhere a little bit greater than Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. So the other thing that happened yesterday, and I promise I'm almost done. I promise. Yesterday, we went back outside the walls of the kingdom, right? Outside the walls of the palace, and we were with Dragon. And Dragon happens to start moving towards the wall because he's missing his friend Minli. But then all of a sudden, the statues, the lion statues, the 3 lion statues come alive and start having a conversation with Dragon. And they go, oh, well, the rules are I'm not supposed to talk in front of humans, but dragons, those aren't totally real. And all of a sudden they have this great conversation. And right at that moment where we left off, the male lion or father lion, I believe is kind of how they were kind of saying it, was that he showed the dragon a kind of a crystal ball with a crack in it, right? And he was going to talk about the story that would come. The question last from Dragon was, what did you do? It's called the String of Destiny. We were afraid the city would break. Oh, that's right. Why? Because Magistrate Tiger, so funny that we have these characters. Magistrate Tiger was in such concern, and he was in such bossy mood, and he was worried that the rules were going to break the kingdom. Amazing. It's kind of like yesterday. So the idea is that they were all worried, and then all of a sudden the lion shows this crack in the ball, right? We were afraid that the city would break. As the times became more turbulent with secret meetings and violent outbursts, we watched the crack in our world widen. It was only a matter of time, we thought, before it would tear us into two. One night, as we despaired, we saw a figure walking in the moonlight. Bent and old, he glowed like a lit lantern. There's that simile. When we saw he was carrying a large book and a small sack, we knew instantly it was the old man of the moon, and we called him over. Please help us, we begged him. We need to keep the city together. The old man of the moon looked at us, our outstretched, cracking globe, and our pleading faces. Without a word, he sat down before us and he opened his book, leafing through the pages and stroking his beard. After several minutes of consulting his book, he opened his sack and handed us a red thread. Do you remember the red thread? You are to hold this until it is needed, the old man told us, and then slapped his book shut and walked away, ignoring our words of thanks. We knew the old man of the moon had given us a string of destiny, one of the very strings he used to bind people's lives to each other. It was a marvelous gift. While he left us no instructions, we guessed that we were to use it to tie around the city if it looked as if it were going to split. Boy, I wish I could have one of those red threads. After that, night after night after night, rule of three. We watched our sphere, ready to use the string at the first signs of breakage. Unsure of its power or ability, we dared not use it for anything but the direst of circumstances. But the crack did not grow. Unexpectedly, the king renounced his father. Renounced sounds like announced, and that means to say something. Renounced means that you go back on what you might have said before. So renounced means that he is no longer going to be honoring his father's wishes, because probably his father was being pretty evil, right? Magistrate Tiger, we already know him as a character. He exiled his father and his officials from the city, and harmony returned to the city. Slowly, the fracture, remember that word? Fracture, break. That fracture has filled with the powder of earth and stone, and I have held this string unused. So now, the lion with the fractured ball actually has a piece of red thread. Now, Minli is inside, and the king believes that the broken line, or no, sorry, not the broken, the borrowed line is the piece of paper that gives wisdom, and he's willing to give it to Minli. But the dragon sees right now that the lions have one of the red threads. This is amazing. Oh my gosh. Which one is the borrowed line? As the male lion finished, he lifted his paw to reveal a flattened line of red thread. The borrowed line, The dragon said. That's it. Minli said she needed to get the borrowed line from the guardian of the city. You're the guardian, and that's the borrowed line we need. I suppose it is, the lion said, looking at the string. So perhaps I have been holding it all this time, just so I could give it to you. And the lion dropped the string into the dragon's outstretched hand. Oh my gosh, I have to look back because it's been such a long time since we've seen the beginning. Now, let's remind ourselves of what that picture is. I see the dragons. I'm wondering if I don't really see the cub that they were talking about, the little troublemaker cub. And I don't quite see the, are those, is that the fractured ball? I think that might be the fractured ball. Anyway, amazing. Now I know. Minli doesn't know where the guardians of the city are. She thought the guardian was going to be the king. The king's not the guardian. The guardian are the lions who protect the gate to the entrance of the city. Oh my God, so cool. Chapter 25. Who do we see? That looks like Ma and Ba. I'm going to predict before we even start that that's Ma and Ba. Look at the first three words. Ma and Ba. Score, score, score. Okay, sorry. Ma and Ba found the days without Minli long and difficult. In the morning, as soon as they woke up, they rushed to Minli's bed to see if she was there. In the afternoon, they hurried from the fields, hoping to find Minli waiting at home. And at night, with a rice bowl and a set of chopsticks waiting for her at the table, they looked up at every sound of a footstep outside. But an empty bed and house always greeted them, and the footsteps always belonged to a passing neighbor. While Ma's anger had disappeared with the goldfish man, she grew a little thinner and paler every day, and Ba's eyes no longer twinkled. Inference. Why is Ma getting thinner and paler? Why is Ba no longer having a twinkle in his eye? What have they lost? They've lost Minli, and they are getting more and more afraid because it's longer and longer that she's not home. You ever missed somebody like that before? My friend T, she snuck home and surprised her sister and her family over the holiday break because they needed it. She heard that red thread between her and her sister needed to be connected, right? I can't wait to hear about your adventure, by the way. Saw some good pictures. Anyway, so right now, Ma and Ba are getting a little thinner and paler and losing the twinkle in their eye because they are missing their daughter. And one evening, in the middle of the night, I love moments like that, Ba woke up alone in bed and a voice was calling him. Wake up, old man, the fish said. Wake up, your wife needs you. Ba quickly rose and looked for Ma, who was sitting by Minli's bed. In the stillness of the darkness, Ma shook with sobs. Oh, wife, Ba said softly, sitting next to her. Ma turned to him, her face shiny from wet tears. What if Minli never returns? Ma asked. What if we were always without her? Ba put his hand over his face, brushing away the tears that were forming in his eyes. I don't know, he said. Neither do I, Ma said, and she buried her face in Minli's bed, crying in despair. Oh, what heartbreak. Ba stroked her hair as she wept, occasionally closing his eyes as he fought his own gloom. Finally, as Ma's crying slowed and calmed, Ba said, do you remember the story I told you about the paper of happiness and the secret, which was one word written over and over and over again? The back of Ma's head nodded, and Ba allowed himself a very small smile. I have thought a long time about what that word might be, Ba said. Was it wisdom? Was it honor? Was it love? Was it truth? For a long time, I liked to think that the word was kindness. Ma's face remained hidden in Minli's bed, but her sobs had stopped, and Ba knew she was listening. But now, Ba said, I think, perhaps, the word was faith. A faint gray light began seeping into the room, as if the moon was escaping from the clouds. Ma lifted her head and looked at Ba again. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve and gave him a small, sad smile. Perhaps, she said, perhaps you're right. And she placed her hand, wet with tears, in his. Do you see how Mom's starting to soften? I love it. I love that Ma is starting to soften. I love that Ma is starting to maybe believe in some of these stories. And also, do you remember how Ba never thought that Ma was listening? That all she was doing was sighing after every one of these stories. But the reality is, she listened to every story. She knows these stories. And now she might be getting faith. Chapter 26. Look at that bag. Look at the thread, something falling out of it. I have to look at it again. What does that look like? I don't know. It looks like bread. Maybe bread? What do you think? Pizza? You think they were having some pizza? Maybe they were having some weird hats or something like that. It looks kind of like it might be hats or something like that. Let's find out. What do you think? Nobody's writing me anything. I'm waiting. Okay. The next morning, time has passed. So the next morning, let's find out who and where we are. Because now you wonder, am I in Ba and Ma's house, or am I at the palace with Minli, right? Or am I with the dragon and the lions? The next morning, Minli woke up alone under a heavy, rich blanket. Now I know where I am. Even though she was on the floor of the garden pagoda, she had slept comfortably. And as she sat up, she realized that was probably due to the silk pillows that she had been lying on. The soft sunlight cast leaf shadows across her face, and the wind made gentle ripples in the moss-colored lake in front of her. The imperial garden was just as beautiful in the day as it was by night. On one side of her lay a small table with a small pot of tea, a bowl of rice porridge, and tea-stained eggs. Tea-stained eggs. Have you guys ever had that? I don't think I've ever had tea-stained eggs. Breakfast, Minli thought to herself. But before she reached for it, she saw that a yellow brocade traveling bag lay on the other side of her. I don't know what a brocade is. Hold on a minute. Let me see if I can find out. She reached for it and saw that a yellow brocade traveling bag lay on the other side of her. I don't know what a brocade is yet, but I know that it's a traveling bag. Inside the bag, Minli found her humble blanket, rabbit rice bowl with needle and bamboo piece, chopsticks, a generous supply of cakes, and her hollow gourd full of fresh water. On the very top lay the gold-threaded pouch that held the ripped page of fortune. Minli took the pouch and held it with two hands, squiggle writing. Well, I have the borrowed line, Minli thought. At least I hope it's the borrowed line. No, Minli. The dragon's got it. She doesn't know that, though. So after a quick breakfast, Minli quietly left the pavilion. Part of her was tempted to explore the mosaic walkways through the jewel-colored leaves, but she knew being discovered by one of the king's counselors would be disastrous. Also, she knew Dragon was patiently waiting for her outside. So, using the king's secret door, Minli carefully left the garden and walls of the inner city. And when she was out of the garden, Minli realized it was very early morning. The outer city was still sleeping. The stands were bare and the umbrellas were closed. Quickly, Minli scurried to the gate. Ooh, I like that word, scurried. Right? With great effort, she was able to get through. She had to use a metal pole she'd found on the ground to lift the lock and lever one of the doors. She had to use a metal pole she'd found on the ground to lift the lock and lever one of the doors open. Even then, she was only able to get it open a crack and had to squeeze out. As she fell through the gate, gasping for air, she was shocked to see Dragon lying right in front of the stone lions, sleeping soundly. It took a couple of prods before Dragon woke, and his loud morning yawns almost put Minli in a panic. But they were able to get back to the hiding shelter of the forest before anyone saw them. "What were you doing by the city gate?" Minli asked. "You were supposed to stay hidden." "I was getting the borrowed line," Dragon said. "What do you mean?" Minli said. "I have the borrowed line." And in a rush, the two of them told each other about their night adventures. Dragon stared at the ripped page from the book, and Minli looked at the red cord in Dragon's hand. "So which is the real borrowed line?" Dragon asked Minli. "I guess it's another question we'll have to ask the old man of the moon," Minli said. They're back together. They found each other. Oh, they're so excited, so happy, so happy. Is it okay if I read one more? Is that okay? We've got like 3.5 minutes, and I think I can do it. So now Dragon and Minli are back together. They have two borrowed lines, or at least they don't know which one's the right one. And all of a sudden we have this very interesting picture of a very large structure, or two, because I see small trees at the top. And are those wisps of clouds, or are they fire? Is that water down there? What is it? Chapter 27. With both borrowed lines, Minli and the dragon continued on their journey. Minli remade her compass with her rabbit rice bowl and followed the needle's pointed direction. As they traveled, the land became more barren, rocky, and steep. Barren must mean empty. Rocky, you know what that means, and steep, straight up. Doi, look at the picture. Barren, rocky, steep. Very few trees in a barren land. Minli remade her compass with her rabbit rice bowl and followed the needle's pointed direction. As they traveled, the land became more barren, rocky, and steep. Without trees to tame it, the wind blew wildly, burning Minli's cheeks red with cold. The icy air shoved and pushed them, as if trying to keep them back, as if pushing them from entering this space. T, or anybody who lives in the cold areas, you guys know what it feels like to have really cold wind on your face. Last week, we had one really cold day, and Miss Rainey and I took this long walk in the cold, and we were both like shivering. Our cheeks felt as if they were going to freeze off, but they didn't. They just got really red and really cold, and we came inside, and then it felt really hot. Okay, sorry. Without trees to tame it, the wind blew wildly, burning Minli's cheeks red with cold. Icy air shoved and pushed them, as if trying to keep them back. Late in the afternoon, after traveling up stony ground, Dragon made a noise. "Look up ahead," he said. Far ahead of them seemed to be a spot of bright yellow. Against the gray landscape, it seemed like a fallen piece of gold. "Is it a forest? Trees with yellow leaves?" Minli asked. Then she looked at the gray stone surrounding them. But what trees could grow here? "I think there's a village," the dragon said, squinting his eyes. "If there is, we can get you some warmer clothes." Even though the cold hadn't bothered the dragon, he had noticed she was shivering. "We won't reach it before night," Minli said. "But I think there's a cave up ahead. Let's stay there for the night, and tomorrow we'll try to reach the village, or whatever it is." The dragon agreed, and they made camp in the cave. The king's supply of traveling cakes saved her and Dragon from hunger, but Minli wished for the thick silk blanket of the palace. Even in the shelter of the cave, away from the wind, the earth was stark and cold. Minli built a fire as quickly as she could and sighed as its warmth slowly began to reheat her. But that night, Minli could not fall asleep. even with the dragon snoring behind her, the fire crackling, and her blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes did not close. Like the stone dust that the wind blew, thoughts kept circling in her head. She kept thinking about Ma and Ba and the orphan buffalo boy. With pangs of guilt, she thought about how Ma and Ba pushed her to go home early from the field, how her rice bowl was always the first filled, how every night when she went to sleep in her warm bed, she knew that they were there, and how worried they must have been now that she was not. The buffalo boy didn't have that. Instead, he had a dirt floor, a pile of grass for his bed, a muddy buffalo, and a secretive friend. Yet he turned away her copper coin and laughed in the sun. Minli couldn't quite understand it and somehow felt a little ashamed. But just as Minli shook her head with confusion, there was a sudden sound outside the cave. What was that? She cocked her head. There it was again, like a low grumble of thunder. Was it going to rain? Minli quietly got up, slipped out of the cave to see. But when she got outside, she screamed. The noise had not been the grumble of thunder. It had been the growl of a tiger. The giant tiger snarled and then jumped right at Minli. And that's where I'm going to stop. Oh my gosh, I want to read so badly. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, that is not anything that picture was going to surprise me with. Where in the world are, well, I guess they are, I believe, in a world that's similar to places like Asia, and Asia has tigers, right? Oh my gosh. So I want to talk to you just a second. Are you just a little amazed at the fact that we started with the whole idea of Minli having an opportunity to be with a king, to eat well, to wake up with gifts waiting? Did you notice that everybody in that area, the buffalo boy and the king, they didn't need to say goodbye. They just let Minli go on the way. But did you see how Minli was kind of like, wow, I didn't get to say goodbye to the buffalo boy. I might never see you again. The king just didn't show up again, and she needed to sneak out before everybody else got up. The dragon has found two other, not people, excuse me, but statues who come to life and have conversations with him and give him the borrowed thread. They find each other, Minli and the dragon. We have a little picture moment of Ma and Ba getting worse while their daughter is absent from her. And I know that we have some people in our group who have had to say goodbye to their children because they're getting older and they go off to college, or they grow up and they start living their own life. I did that. And right now, many of you guys who are watching this probably hang out and have a nice warm bed to sleep in and have a nice safe place to be. Hi, Matt B. And the beauty of this is that this book gives us this idea that we should be mindful and thoughtful and considerate to the people who are around us. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to leave you here in a much better place than I was when I first showed up, and in a much, much better place than I was in the historic moments of yesterday. I will tell you that this is one of my great, great ways to let go of the things that might be hampering me and be able to hold on a little bit to the opportunity of being present and in these beautiful stories. It takes me a little bit away, and then I can come back and maybe I have a better perspective of where I am. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is the end of our reading time. Thank you so very much for participating. I will see you tomorrow afternoon. That's because I have school. So I have to teach, and then we come back and I'll do some reading with you tomorrow afternoon. But until then, freak out about the fact that Minli has a tiger jumping right at her and the dragon snoring soundly inside with a fire going on. I don't know, is she going to be saved? Is she going to die? Is our main character going to die in this moment? Is this tiger going to eat her? Or what could it possibly mean? Remember, what you cling to, you will lose. We've already learned that message. And without further ado, who's the friend who's going to lead you to the borrowed line of your life? I love you. Be safe, be wonderful, be kind. Treat people with dignity and respect, and learn this. I love you. Now get out of here.